Hi, this is James from Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we're going to go over the two-player game Battle for Stalingrad by DVG Games. We're going to go down to the table. I'm going to give you a general idea of the rules, and we'll come back and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, so this game here is going to depict the war for the vital city of Stalingrad during the Russian winter of 1942. So the Germans are cut off and far from home, and the Germans have to secure the city of Stalingrad in order to make sure supplies can keep coming to them and survive the winter. As the Russian players, you're trying to prevent this from happening, because if you cut off the supplies to the Germans, you'll seal their fate. Also, the cool thing that this also shows is the Russians built up a huge army in preparation for this Operation Uranus that they're going to try to take out the Germans with, and there's cards in here that are thematic for that, and we're going to just go over basically what you're going to get in the game and the rules. So in the game, you're going to get heroic counters. So these are heroic service counters. You're going to get rubble tokens and ration tokens. Each player is going to get action cards and force cards, and these are the location cards. So the location cards in the game are going to have these little things on here, and for how many rubble tokens you have on there is how many rations, if you control it, you'll receive. And at the beginning of the game, you're just going to shuffle these guys up, and you're going to put out 5. Now, if the area is ever destroyed, it's going to flip to this side. You can still control the area, but you're not going to get any rations from it. And I'll explain the importance of rations in a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and put these guys out. So you'll get 5. We're going to put these decks off to the side for now. And the rest of the cards will go back to the box. Okay? So now what will happen is you have 2 zones in each of these things. So you have the controlling and the perimeter. So in each, and the Germans can only be on one side, so you'll pick your side. So let's say we're going to go on this side of the map for the Germans, and the Russians will be only on this side of the map. Now, to go over a couple more, get these out of the way, a couple more of the cards here before we go over what they're going to do. You're also going to have force cards, and the force cards are basically what's going to be doing all your work in the game. So these force cards, when you either have them with your starting points or you pay for them, you're going to place these either in the perimeter, depending, or in the controlling area. Now, when these come out, like this one here, this shows you what it has. It has 2 combat, which we'll explain what that does in a minute, and gains 1 combat when attacking. So it can be up to 3 combat. This is the 64th tank for the Russians. So you're going to have starting rations of 3. So if this guy's out here, you're going to put 3 rations on there. And the cost for getting the card is going to be in the, let's look at this one here, upper right hand corner, and this is 1. So you're going to have to actually discard that number of action cards, which we'll get to in a second, to actually be able to deploy this unit. And this unit's pretty lenient here because it's only 2 combat and has no starting rations. So the other thing you're going to have in the game is going to be action cards, and action cards actually have some pretty cool dual purposing to them. They have, so if we look at some of the action cards, they have their ability up on the top right here, which is going to be the action ability that you can use during combat to either increase your strength in that, or combat in that battle, or decrease it. You also can use it for the effect down here, which this one here will just simply add 2 rations to your forces in the perimeter areas. We're going to get to the importance of rations in a second, but here's the example of taking away or adding. So this one will add 2 to your combat. This will subtract 3 from the combat of your opponent. So these are pretty cool, and you can actually play as many as these as you want for combat. But bear in mind too that these cards also are used to be discarded to deploy units. So they are very important. And you only get a certain number of cards here at the beginning of your phase, which we'll explain here in a second. There is also, in the Russian players, they also have Operation Uranus cards here that are special. Let's see if I can find one here. And there's only 6 of them in here. And these guys are unique cards only to the Russians. So the Russians are the only ones that have it. As a Russian player, you get 6, like I said. The information in the red at the top of the card, right here, notes the cost you must play at the time you play the card. So here you have to destroy one of your forces. You just have to in order to get it. The black text in the middle of the card details the penalty to the German players. So the German players add 1 to the purchase cost of all enemy forces, which means I have to now discard an additional, if I'm the German player, an additional action card to play any forces at all, which is pretty devastating. This card remains in play until the German player pays the cost noted in the red at the bottom of the card. So if I discard, if the German player discards, you discard this if the German player destroys 2 of his forces. So if I destroy 2 of my forces, this thing's out of here. Either way, these cards are pivotal and they are super nasty. And they're only for the Russian player. One cool thing I didn't go over yet here is these heroic counters. And what these guys will do is if your unit survives a battle where you destroy all the other opposing enemies' units and you control the location. So actually, they could be at the perimeter. So you have the and you have the perimeter. So if they're at the perimeter at the end of the battle, you can get a heroic service marker on there, and you actually, sorry, I'm wrong. You have to destroy all the units in the area. If you destroy all the units in the area and you control the area, you get a heroic service medal. If those conditions are met, you'll get it. And what it'll do is for each hero service counter force on a force, that force will gain +1 combat and absorb 1 extra hit when retreating. So your units will become more powerful, so they'll sort of level up, which is really cool. And when they retreat, you can absorb more hits, which we'll get into in a second. Okay, so let's pull these down here because we're going to have more cards on the table here, and I'm going to go over locations real quick. So other than, so let's say locations here, other than the ration counters I told you that you get at the beginning of each round for however many rubble are on here. So if there's 2 rubble, 0 to 2, you'll get 2. If there's 3 to 4, you get 1. If there's 5, the location is destroyed. And again, if the location is destroyed, you get no rations. If you control this location, your reinforcements action cards pay for 3 cards of cost. So these make your action cards much more valuable. And so each location can have a passive ability that you get for controlling it, which is also pretty cool. So you're going to look at that when you're basically deploying your troops out to the different locations, because you can have a lot of strategic value in that. Because if the Russians, like the card I showed you before, are making me cost more to do it, if I control that location, I can sort of negate it. So that's pretty nice. Also, I'll mention real quick, if you have an action or you try to perform an action with one of these action cards and it's canceled, you actually don't have to pay any costs that are associated with it. So keep that in mind when you're playing the game here too. So you're going to have a sequence of play during the game, and the sequence of play during the game is going to be, these are the steps that each player is going to take. So you're going to take turns. So the German forces go first, and then the Russian, and then the German, and then the Russian. And you're going to take these steps. You're going to supply, you're going to do actions, and then you're going to draw cards. So on your supply step, you're going to distribute rations generated by each location you control to any of your forces in that location. So again, you're going to look at that, and you're going to look at the chart, and you're going to get that many rations, and you can distribute them to those force cards. And I don't believe that there is any limit to the number of rations that you can have on a card. And Then you're going to do the action step, and there are several types of actions you can perform in any order. You can also perform an action more than once. For each action, declare it, pay it, and then resolve it. So again, if you get an action canceled, you don't have to worry about it. So when you're playing an action card, you can play an action card from your hand to gain its effect unless noted otherwise on the card. So we saw an example of one of the action cards, so we can take a look and get that effect down on the bottom. So we can just play it for that, and then it's discarded. And some of these have effects that remove rations and can inflict rubber on locations and inflict damage. And then you resolve the damage if that happens, and I'll explain that in a second. You can do move actions. So in the move actions, you can do something like you can move your unit to the perimeter. You can, let me pull this down a little bit here so you can see. Okay, so let's pull down a little bit more. Let's do a little bit more so we should get this all in here. So if I move this guy to the perimeter, I have to remove a ration. I can remove the guy to an adjacent location. I'll have to remove a ration. If I'm out of rations, I can't move the unit. And the other thing in a location is you can't have more than 3 force cards in a location. So if I have 3 right here, and there's, let's say, 3 in the perimeter, I can't move this. So if I have 3 here and 3 here, and you generally like stack them if you wanted to, like this. But anyway, I wouldn't be able to move this guy to the perimeter at all because of the locational limit of 3. So that's basically movement. You'll have to spend a ration to move. And you can also do, the final thing you can do is an attack action. And what you're going to do an attack action is you're going to have to discard a ration from each of the force units you want to attack. If your force unit doesn't have a ration, you can't attack. So you can see the importance of rations, but there's more. And then you're also going to put a rubble counter on the location. So because you're battling there, you're destroying a little bit of the location when you're fighting. Okay, so you're also going to have a resupply action. You can discard an action card from your hand to distribute a total of 2 rations to your forces. So you can get rid of an action card to do that. So action cards have a lot of utility purposes in the game, so which is really nice. You also can buy force cards. So what you're going to do, and we're going to go into a gameplay on here, but in general, always you're going to have one of your force cards flipped over. So this card will be available to purchase. And once you purchase it, you have to wait until after you deploy it, then the next one is going to be flipped. You have to actually purchase and deploy this guy before you can see the next one. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to go out a little bit here so you can see more of it, and we're going to go ahead and go over the resolving an attack and a basic setup of the start of the game and what you would do. One thing I want to mention, you did have the last step, which is draw step, and at the end of that you would draw 5 action cards for your action deck plus 1 additional action card for each location you control. So if I controlled 3 locations, I would draw 8 action cards. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and show you more of the field here, and we're going to go over the initial setup of the game and the round of play. So the way the game is going to start out is the Russian player is going to start by putting out their forces. Now you can see these point costs on here, which is how much action cards it costs to discard on here. But what you're going to do is you're going to go through this deck as a Russian player, and you're going to pick 11 points of force. And when you place these out, you'll put out the starting rations with it. And you can, as the Russian player, you can put the force in the controlling location or the perimeter, your choice. So I'm going to go ahead and just randomly, so no strategy to this, get 11 points out and put those out. and then we're going to go over the German player setup. Okay, so that's just an idea of a random initial setup. You'd put a lot more strategy into this. Once you put out your Russian troop or force cards, you're going to shuffle your deck, and now you'll have it. So you'll have your top card. Well, we're going to put this right here. Your top card flipped over for the Russian card, and that card here is purchasable for you, and during your turns. So now we're going to go on to the German players. If you're the German player, you get 9 points to put out your force cards, and they can only be in the perimeter, so none of them can be at the controlling location. So I'm going to go ahead and randomly pick 9, but you put a lot of strategy into this because you're going to take a look, because you get to go play second, you're going to take a look at what the Russian player put out, and you're going to base your strategy around that. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, so this is just a random setup. This is no strategy to this. So I just put 3 forces out. And the last thing you're going to do is the Russian player is going to get 10 action cards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. So the Russian player will have 10 action cards, and the German player will have 5. And the German player will go first. So it's just a basic idea of the round here. I'm going to take a look at my cards, and I have my purchasable unit flipped over, which is the 71st Infantry, which is 3 combat and stops 1 extra hit when retreating. So I'm going to take a look at these cards, and I'm going to see if I want to play any actions at all, and go from there. So we're going to go ahead and go through the basic round of the game. So the first thing I'm going to do is supply. So in the supply portion again, what I'm going to do is look at any areas I control. I don't control any, but each of my perimeter units will get 1 ration. Now, just because of fitting this on camera, these two, the 16th and 14th Panzer, are actually in this location because we're going to do a battle. And this guy's over in this location. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and start my actions. I'm going to go ahead and pay 1 ration from each of these guys and move them up. So these two will be in this location, and this guy will be in this location. So I actually control those. I control this location currently because the other guy's in the perimeter. And one of my actions I can do is also play a card. And let's see what I got here. I'm going to go ahead and play this card, and on their turn, on the enemy turn, which is the Russians, on their draw step, they don't draw cards for the locations they control. So I'll go ahead and place this out. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to play that during their draw step. So there's some action cards that actually don't get played right now. They can play on the enemy's turn, that's one of them. So sorry about that. I can also do this one where I can do air supply and distribute extra rations. So I'll go ahead and do that one. So I'm going to pick this location here, and it doesn't have any rebel counters on it, so I'm going to go ahead and put 5 rations. And I'll go ahead and discard that action card, so that's my example. And I'll go ahead and put 2 on this one and 3 on this one. And I'll explain the importance of the rations here in a second. And I can move more stuff around. I can discard some of these action cards. So I'd say I'm really ambitious. I can discard 2 of these action cards, and I can deploy this to any of the perimeters or an empty uncontrolled location or a location I control. I'll deploy them to an empty uncontrolled location because there's no one on the other side there, so I'll put him up on there. So the other thing I can do, which is the most important portion of the game, well, there's a lot of important portions, but are going to go ahead and go over and explaining how to battle. So I'm going to go ahead and discard 1 ration from each of these guys. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a rubble counter on the location. So now we're going to fight. So we're both going to do this. So we're both going to look at our decks of cards. So he has a huge stack of cards, and I have cards. And we're all going to pick however many we want to play. And right now, without doing anything, I have 10 combat to his 4. So he's going to look at his cards, or she, and they're going to say, okay, I really want to win this battle, so I will give +6 and -2 to me. So that gives them 10, and that cuts me down to actually, we might play it a little different here. I forgot he also gets +2 to combat when attacking. So I'm actually at 12. So this guy's going to put me at 10, and he's going to be at 10. So he's going to be like, oh, you know what? For the first victory, I definitely want to win. So he's going to give me another -3. So that's going to put me down to 7 to his 10. And I'm going to go ahead and play my +2. So that means that I will be at 9 to his 10. So these cards will get discarded. Oh, and right before that, we're going to both randomly flip over one of the top cards from our action deck. So he did that. He got a +2. I got a +2. So that evens out. So I'm only getting 1 hit. We're going to go ahead and discard all these guys and resolve the damage. Now, when you're resolving the damage, if a unit ever gets a damage, it's destroyed. But I can negate a damage per ration counter on here. So I can discard 1 ration and we're good. I can also absorb 2 damage by retreating. So if I retreat out of there, I'm obviously giving control to the other player. That is the basics of combat. And the reason it's so important is because once you control all 5 locations, you win the game. So the game just continues. When a force is destroyed, so let's say this guy was destroyed, it would actually go to the bottom of my force deck. So it could come back out in the future. And when I actually purchased that one, a new one would have came out. And I'll be able to redeploy it. So you're going to look at, in the game, a lot of different factors, but some, and I'll be going on the bottom. A lot of different factors, but you're going to look at the locations. You're going to look at the ration costs. You're going to look at the passive ability you get for controlling location. And you're going to sometimes want to just simply destroy these with action cards. Like if I can't control this area right now, I may not want him getting all the extra ration counters to be able to do more stuff and be able to fend off more attacks. So you can see why these ration counters are so important and why keeping a supply of rations is very vital to the game. So let's go ahead back up to the table and I'll give you my final thoughts on the Battle for Stalingrad. So yeah, Battle for Stalingrad by DVG Games is a really good like war simulation game. It's more on my level where the rules are nice and clear. It's only probably about 3 or 4 pages long for the bulk of the rules. And I like the card mechanics in the game, and I like the use of rations to do just about everything for your force units. I like the promotion of your units, so I like leveling up of the units. And the 2 decks are pretty asymmetric, so it's pretty cool playing as the Russians, as the Germans. I think the Germans, you have to be a little bit more aggressive in controlling locations and a little bit more brutal. Where the Russians, you can do some nasty stuff if the Germans take too long. It doesn't take all that long to play at 2 players, but it can take a little longer depending on how much push and pull is at each location. But eventually you're going to destroy all the locations too. So think that it's harder on the German player if the locations are destroyed with the rations, but it's also hard on the Russian player. But as a German player, when you play it, I feel that you need to be a little faster and you need to be able to control all these locations. And if you take too long, it favors the Russian player. So it's really cool in that aspect. I I haven't played very many war games, but this is going to be one that I would pull out and play if anyone asks. So I did like Battle for Stalingrad, and I recommend it. Thanks for watching.